Chapter 2. The Mirror is Born. The work began the following morning. Mist still clung to the canals when the Bellini furnace roared back to life, but the village had already grown accustomed to the rhythm of the glassmakers. Smoke rose from their chimney before the church bells rang, and long after darkness settled over the lagoon, the glow from their workshop windows remained visible like a small, captured sunset. The Mirror demanded perfection. That meant weeks of labor. Inside the furnace house, Luca stood beside the grinding table, turning a large circular stone with steady patience. The rough plate of glass rested beneath the wheel, while fine sand and water formed a slurry that slowly wore the surface smooth. Grinding glass was not dramatic work. It was slow, deliberate, and unforgiving. Any moment of carelessness could ruin weeks of effort. Adriano leaned against the open doorway, watching his brother work. Outside, a narrow canal reflected the pale morning sky while a fisherman guided his boat silently past the houses. "You enjoy this too much," Adriano said. Luca did not look up. "Someone must. You could grind that plate for the rest of your life." "That is precisely the point." Adriano chuckled quietly. Their father Matteo entered the workshop carrying a small wooden chest that he placed carefully on the workbench near the window. When he opened it, a dull metallic gleam appeared inside. Adriano straightened slightly. "Already?" Matteo nodded. "The glass is ready for polishing. Soon it will be ready for silver." The chest contained several small bottles wrapped in cloth. One held a thin sheet of beaten silver. Another contained cloudy liquid chemicals whose scent carried a sharp mineral edge, and in the center sat a glass vial filled with a strange liquid metal. Mercury, even at rest, it seemed alive. The surface quivered with the faintest vibration, reflecting the workshop in warped miniature shapes. Adriano stepped closer. He always found Mercury mesmerizing. It moved like thought. Luca wiped his hands on a cloth before approaching the bench. "Careful," he said. "I know." "Do you?" Matteo lifted the vial gently. "This is not like glass," the old man said. "It is poison if mishandled." Adriano tilted his head. "Yet we use it to make beauty." "Many beautiful things are dangerous." The words lingered in the warm air. Mercury had been used in mirror making for generations. When combined with thin sheets of silver, it formed an amalgam that adhered to the back of polished glass, creating a surface capable of perfect reflection. At least in theory. In practice, the process required patience and precision. And caution. Matteo set the vial down. "Not yet," he said. The grinding continued. Days passed in a rhythm of labor that blurred together like brushstrokes on a canvas. Luca oversaw the flattening and polishing of the glass surface until it reflected the workshop with startling clarity. Adriano handled the delicate preparation of the reflective backing. He worked in a smaller side room where the air remained cooler, and the light fell through a single narrow window. There he spread the thin sheet of silver across a polished stone table, smoothing every ripple with delicate tools. Then came the mercury. He uncorked the vial slowly. Even the faintest movement caused the liquid metal to tremble. With careful motions, he poured a small amount onto the silver sheet. The mercury spread across the surface like a living mirror, forming a shining layer that moved with hypnotic grace. Adriano leaned closer. The silver beneath the liquid metal seemed to dissolve into brightness. The amalgam formed slowly, the two metals merging in a way that had fascinated alchemists for centuries. He dipped a brush into the mixture and spread it carefully. The reflection of the room shimmered across the mercury surface. For a moment, Adriano thought he saw the image shift, not much, just slightly. As if the reflection had hesitated before copying his movement, he blinked. The surface looked normal again. "Too long starring," he murmured. Still, he worked more slowly after that. The smell of the chemicals hung faintly in the air. It was not unpleasant, but it carried a metallic sharpness that lingered at the back of the throat. Matteo appeared at the doorway. "How does it look?" "Smooth," Adriano said. "Not breathe too deeply in here." Smiled faintly. "You say that every time. And every time you ignore me." Probably did. Hours later, the moment arrived. Luca carried the finished glass plate into the room while Matteo and Adriano prepared the silvered backing. The polished surface gleamed with perfect clarity. Adriano positioned the glass carefully over the mercury silver amalgam. Slowly, they lowered it into place. The metals bonded to the glass. The transformation happened almost invisibly. What had been a transparent plate moments before now held depth, reflection. The room appeared inside it. The furnace flames glowed in the distance. Luca leaned closer. It worked. Wiped his hands on a cloth and stepped back. For a moment, none of them spoke. The mirror rested upright against the wall, taller than a man and framed by the dim light of the small chamber. It reflected the three Bellinis standing together. Yet something about the image felt strangely vivid. The reflections seemed sharper than the real room. Adriano tilted his head. The mirror did the same, but not quite at the same moment. A faint delay, like an echo. Matteo noticed his expression. "What is it?" "Nothing," Adriano said quickly, but he continued staring. The mirror seemed deeper than it should have been, almost as if the room extended inside it. Matteo stepped forward slowly. His scarred fingers hovered near the surface but did not touch it. The reflection of his hand looked oddly precise, too precise. "It sees too clearly," the old man murmured. The words made Luca glance toward him. "What does that mean?" Matteo shook his head slightly. "Only that we have done our work well." He did not sound entirely convinced. 2 days later, Alessandro virally returned. The mirror stood in the center of the workshop, wrapped in protective cloth. When the covering was removed, the polished glass captured the entire furnace room with startling clarity. Virally stepped closer. His reflection appeared in the mirror. For several long seconds he did not move. Adriano watched him carefully. Something about the man's gaze reminded him of the way scholars studied strange instruments or rare specimens. Not admiration, investigation. Finally, Virely spoke quietly. "Remarkable." Matteo folded his arms. "It is as you requested." Virely nodded slowly. He continued staring into the glass. Adriano suddenly felt the strange sensation that the mirror was not simply reflecting the man. It was examining him. The thought passed quickly, but it left a faint unease behind. The mirror was wrapped again, and arrangements were made to deliver the mirror to the Virely estate. As the wheels rolled away along the narrow road, Adriano stood in the workshop doorway watching Virely and his vehicle disappear into the pale afternoon mist. Behind him, the furnace crackled softly.